Welcome to another episode of Comic Class, everyone, and it's time to continue our 2019 retrospective. And last week we talked about the best characters of the year, but every good story needs an antagonist, something to provide conflict. And 2019 was a year full of conflict. And not just in the depressing wasteland we call reality, but also in comics. So today we're counting down the top 10 comic book villains of 2019. Number 10, Rhodes Reilly. Spinner and Locke is a series that took the indie comic scene by storm in 2018 when it proposed the shocking concept of what if Calvin and Hobbes grew up to become cops in a degrading city full of crime and sin. Surprisingly enough, this gamble actually spawned one of the best breakout series of the year, so in 2019, it had a lot to live up to. But more importantly, it had to answer the question, okay, now what do we do? Because season 1 of this series kind of used up almost every element of Calvin and Hobbes. So, what do you move into in Season 2? Simple. You move into the other newspaper comic strips. Season 2 of Spinner and Locke introduced a new villain, Rhodes Reilly, the dark evil version of Beetle Bailey. And while Beetle might be a goofy, lazy soldier always quick with a quip, Rhodes Reilly was a goofy, lazy soldier who was captured, tortured, pushed to the point of breaking, and then returned home to find that his pregnant wife had died while he was captured. He had suffered so much pain that he just stopped feeling anything. And he found it exuberating, freeing even. He adopted a new philosophy that once you've had the worst day of your life, nothing can hurt you. So he sets out to give the entire city the worst day of its life. Rhodes' motivations get him a lot of points for this list, but what really pushed him over the edge was the artwork of Jorge Santiago Jr., who gave him this rigid, ghastly smile and eyes that were nothing more than a glimmer in the darkness, making him one of the most memorably designed villains of the entire year. Number 9, Carnage. I know I'm going to get a lot of heat for this one, but Carnage is a character that has needed an update. He's like Venom, but crazier, and he likes to cut stuff up. Cool. Anything else? No, that's about it. Okay, well, that's fine for the 90s, when all you had to do to make a character popular was cover them in spikes and say they were really strong, but that doesn't really hold up for long. And as we've seen over the past 2 decades, various writers have tried to do something new with him, tried to update him or give him some depth, and none of it really ever stuck. That is until this year, with the event Absolute Carnage, where Donny Cates finally took this character to the next level in a way that actually feels like it'll stick. Carnage was resurrected, brought back from the grave, and transformed into the harbinger of the god of the symbiotes, Null. So essentially, Carnage went from crazed red serial killer Venom to zombie messenger of space Satan. When it comes to bad guy promotions, that's kind of a big one. Number 8, Omega. In Last Night on Earth, Scott Snyder's finale to his multi-series spanning Batman run, we saw a clone of Batman waking up in the future where the heroes hadn't just lost, everyone lost. This world had become a cold, hard place, a place where there was no hope, where mankind, regular human beings, had become the enemies. The only source of order in this world came from the tyrant calling himself Omega, a masked mystery man who was using the anti-life equation to brainwash everyone into serving him. Little was known about this figure except that he was in some way connected to the original Batman from before the fall of civilization. Now, I won't spoil it for you, but I will just say that Omega goes on to become a symbol of how far down someone can fall. A symbol of what a cruel and hateful world can do to someone, and how much even the bravest soul can become twisted into something dark and evil. Number 7, General Fordian. Fordian shows how far obsession can drive a man. What horrors a man can commit when they feel like they have a calling. The Hulk is no stranger to having a deranged military man hunting him down, as General Thunderbolt Ross had been one of his longest-running adversaries, but all this time, Fordian had been working under Ross as his protege, watching the Hulk, watching his path of destruction, and whereas Ross was guided by rage and emotions, Fordian took everything that he felt towards the Green Giant and focused it like a laser beam. And while he was chasing the Hulk down ever since the start of the Immortal Hulk run, this was the year that he took his methods up a notch. He desecrated the grave of Rick Jones to twist him into a new form of the abomination that was pure nightmare fuel. He stormed Gamma Flight's headquarters and single-handedly took out each of their members, killing some of them in cold blood without a trace of remorse, because to him, his mission was right, and everyone outside of that mission was wrong and deserved what they got. He even became absorbed by the new abomination skin that he created, allowing himself to be transformed into a macabre terror, not even understanding the irony that his obsession had made him into as much of a monster as what he was chasing. Number 6. Henry. Fearscape is a series about a muse coming to the greatest writer in the world, asking for his help in banishing the fears and darkness that lurk inside the souls of humans so they can usher in a golden age of creativity and inspiration. Unfortunately, when she arrives, the writer she's looking for is unavailable, and instead, she finds his disgraced protege, Henry, a writer who, despite being a complete hack, believes that he himself is the true greatest writer the world has ever known. Hell, he believes he's the world's greatest everything. So he sets out on this quest that was reserved for another, and needless to say, he screws one thing up after another, continuously making the situation worse with every new decision. But what makes Henry such a great villain isn't just how much he screws over humanity, although it really feels like that should be enough. No, what makes him a great villain is that he is the embodiment of arrogance and superiority complex. This is a character who, no matter how bad he makes things, he remains convinced it's everyone else's fault. In fact, the only time he even for a second begins to think it might be his fault, within the span of a few panels, he is able to twist his logic to the point where nope, he's now completely innocent and everyone else is to blame. This is a character who could stab a baby and still think to themselves, yes, but I'm the true victim in all of this. That's not a hypothetical situation, by the way, it's an actual scene in the book. This is a guy who, even as he is clearly leading mankind into an age of darkness and destruction, he smiles and declares himself to be the hero of the story. He blames everyone but himself, and if there is no one else to blame, he'll blame you, the reader, for reading this book. He wouldn't have done these terrible things if you didn't keep turning the page. And what makes this so great, what makes him such a good villain, is we all know someone like that. You're all on YouTube, you've all seen it before. You know there are those people out there who, no matter how much they screw up, no matter what wrongs they've done, they can always blame someone else. In a very upsane way, Henry is a perfect villain for our times. Number 5, Malekith. Malekith has been the iceberg to Thor's Titanic for years now, just slowly building up his power, increasing the size of his army, recruiting new villains to his side, spreading destruction throughout the 10 realms, conquering lands and bringing them to ruin, all leading up to his eventual conquest of Earth, which finally happened this year in the massive War of the Realms event. Leading an army of frost giants, fire demons, trolls, and angels across the planet was certainly a sight to behold, and for several chapters, he truly felt unstoppable, as every time the heroes advanced, he revealed it was all part of his plan. Or if his plan did fail, he had a backup plan, or even a backup to his backup plan. But what I really want to point out about Malekith is that sometimes what makes a villain great isn't just the terrible deeds they accomplish or how many horrible plans they have, but how much they progress the story. And all the torture and pain he put Thor through over the years finally came to a head, and we saw Thor grow from his conflict with Malekith this year more than he has grown in a long time. In fact, I'd be willing to say that in terms of hero-villain relationships, there was more back and forth between Thor and Malekith this year than any other pair in comics. Number 4, The Batman Who Laughs. Last year, The Batman Who Laughs made our list of best villains. In fact, shockingly enough, he was at number 4 as well. And I think it says a lot about how much of an impact he made on comics this year that he's still on this list. Because no matter what we're counting down in our year in reviews, the newness factor is always a big element. If you turn in the same performance each year, it kind of taps down our excitement. So if you want to be on our list one year and then continue to be on there the next year, you have to top your last performance. And this year, The Batman Who Laughs totally did that. Not only did he corrupt his own army of heroes to form his Secret Six, but with his miniseries that kicked the year off, he infected Batman with his special toxins, causing the Caped Crusader to battle for his own sanity. But what this series really did for The Batman Who Laughs is it established what this character's mission statement really was. You see, I'll be honest with you, I wasn't really the biggest fan of Laughing Boy last year. I put him on the list because I knew he made a big impact on comics, but I honestly looked at him and went, yeah, it's just Batman plus Joker. That's not an interesting villain, that's someone's OC. that they stole the design for from Judge Death. But this year, his miniseries made me realize, oh, what's special about him isn't that he's evil Batman, it's that he's meant to be the embodiment of the worst. He's the representative of the dark multiverse, a collection of worlds where our worst nightmares exist. And a combination of the Joker and Batman is a great representation of the worst possibilities coming to life. So to me, the whole army of twisted heroes thing is nice, but what really made the Batman Who Laughs special this year is that he finally defined his reason for existing. And being the embodiment of living nightmares is kind of a good role for him. However, there was another character this year who was a bare representative of a dark reality. In fact, to add insult to injury, they're even a better villain with laugh in their name. At number 3, the Laughing Man from Gideon Falls. It is stunning to me how there is a villain this year called the Laughing Man whose source and origin is so close to the Batman Who Laughs, and yet he just does everything better. Or worse, whichever gets you more points for the villain list. Now, I know not everyone is caught up on Gideon Falls, so if you want to skip ahead to number 2, then jump to this time right here. But throughout the run of this series, there's been a mystery about the Black Barn. This haunting building that just appears out of nowhere and feels like a gateway to something dark, something unworldly. And this year, we finally learned the secret. That over a century ago, a scientist built a device that would allow him to jump from one dimension to another. But when he opened it up, it awakened something dark. Something that existed between realities. Something that was the embodiment of the darkness between space. And it escaped and went on a cross-dimensional killing spree and continued to haunt the people of Gideon Falls for a lifetime. But haunting and cryptic origin aside, what really gets the Laughing Man this high on the list is presentation. The art style of Andrea Sorrentino really makes him feel like pure darkness, like something that the mind can't even comprehend, something that lives in the corner of your darkest nightmares. No other villain this year had better presentation than the Laughing Man. Now, at number 2, the most dangerous villain of all, Man. But I can't exactly nominate the entire human race as a villain, so instead I'll settle for Nimrod, the futuristic sentinel who was created by mankind to wipe out the mutant race. Now, I'll admit that years ago, if you had told me that Nimrod would be one of the best villains of the year, I wouldn't have believed you, because yes, Nimrod was powerful, but you need more than muscles to make it to the top of the list. But this year, Hickman painted a picture of what the future held for mutants. A future where Nimrod had led his Sentinel forces to overtake the planet, and it was essentially Skynet meets the Matrix with a really snarky AI program. Hickman gave Nimrod so much personality, making him an evil overlord who came off like a pissy boss who wanted you to know that he didn't blame you for not being good enough. It's not your fault, but it's still very important that you know you're not good enough, and he has to destroy you for that. Yes, Nimrod gets points for being the creation of mankind's prejudices and arrogance, and in-game to centuries of bigotry, only to reveal he was still a stepping stone to a much larger evil. But real talk, the main reason he's at number 2 is because Nimrod had dialogue that was so witty, I kind of didn't want the heroes to win. I kind of wanted to keep him around just so that we could continue to hear him talk. Plus, the dude beat up Apocalypse like it was nothing. That's the comic book equivalent of going to prison and beating up the biggest guy there to show everyone that you run things now. And at number 1, for 2 years in a row, Lex Luthor. With 2019 being DC's big year of the villain, how could the top villain of the year not be the guy who set it all off? In 2018, we saw Lex Luthor form his new Legion of Doom and start his quest for power with such an impact that we all knew the payoff had to be huge. And in 2019, Lex didn't disappoint. This year, his plans finally became clear to us. That in an attempt to rescue the multiverse, a multiverse that had become unhinged, he was going to attempt to sway the leaning of the universe towards doom, towards evil, so that way the universe could conquer the giant starbird that judges all and okay, listen, There is literally no way that I could sum up his plan in a top 10 list in any way that would make sense, but just trust me when I tell you it was a really good bad guy plan, and the end goal was that Lex was trying to make the whole universe embrace their inner villain. And he put his money where his mouth was. Literally, Lex, the wealthiest man in the world, took all of his money and promised he would give it to anyone who embraced his philosophy of doom. Meaning, A, he went up to some of the biggest villains in the universe and offered them a multi-million-dollar upgrade, but he also gave every regular Joe in the world who was looking for an excuse to go nuts a really good excuse to go nuts. This meant the heroes of the DC universe didn't just have to worry about supervillains hurting civilians, they had to worry about civilians hurting civilians. And it wasn't just in the main universe that we saw this. I mentioned that Scott Snyder's Last Night on Earth was set in a world where mankind broke down and embraced evil, and it was the conclusion to Snyder's epic Batman run. So you would of course assume that this post-apocalyptic world was caused by a Batman villain, right? Wrong! It was caused by Lex Luthor, who literally challenged Superman to a debate, where Superman would make the argument for good, and Luthor would make the argument for evil. And mankind heard this debate, and they chose evil. Over the last year between Justice League and Last Night on Earth, Scott Snyder took Lex Luthor and turned him into the final evolution of the greatest villain of the modern world. A Twitter troll spraying disinformation, avarice, and hate all behind the mask of debate me. I have often said it's important for characters to evolve with the times, and this year we saw Lex Luthor adopt the tactics of so many real-world villains and use that to destroy the DC universe twice within the same year. That's a resume that's kind of hard to compete with. But that is it. That is our list of the best comic book villains from 2019. Let us know your picks in the comments down below. And you can always contact me around the web on Twitter and Twitch at Professor Thorgy. And if you like this video, then make sure that you click that subscribe button and ring that bell. It's very important that you do, because otherwise, the real villain of all this, YouTube itself, will apparently just not let you know when our videos go up. Speaking of when our videos go up, next week come back so that way you can see our top 10 moments in comics of 2019. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Come back next time.